So people will not believe that heart disease is the number one killer of women.
Yes,
If you
not breast
combine,
cancer.
yes, everybody thinks, oh, it's breast cancer. If you took breast cancer plus all the other cancers, not just breast, but all the other cancers and put them together, that still does not meet what heart disease is the number one killer instead of the cancers. It's amazing. And people don't know this.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Healthy Rebel Speaks Out. And I am Bonnie London. I am so excited today because these are the kinds of discussions that I have with people all the time that really feel that traditional medicine is really not helping them in the way that they feel it should, and a little bit disappointing. So I have a special doctor here today who can speak to this topic. This is Dr. Myra Reed, a functional internal medicine specialist with over 30 years of clinical experience. So she is really going to be able to help explain what is going on here. You are not going to want to miss it. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to be here. I'm excited to actually share so much of the stuff that I learned, my knowledge, and my saying is always knowledge is power. So I love to get the message out and educate people.
Yes. So, what kind of turned the tide for you being trained as a traditional medical practitioner, just as thinking that, maybe there's more to the story than what we have been told?
Well, I was, like you said, a traditional doctor, internal medicine, and I saw that medicine was changing. And about a little over 10 years ago, how the insurance company is dictating how we practice medicine. Big pharma was really pushing all the drugs, and medicine was just going down this track, and it was going down fast. I went to a meeting actually, and I saw these brilliant doctors talking, Dr. Bland and Dr. Mark Hyman, among a lot of other people, that when I heard them speaking, I was like, oh my gosh, they're really talking about the right way medicine needs to be practiced. It's more of a root cause and find out why people are having problems instead of that pill for an ill approach. Because we know that medications are always, of course, they serve a purpose, but a lot of times people just get on one medicine and another and another and another. And these medications actually have side effects that really don't serve people well. So when I heard them talking about reversing disease more naturally and getting off of these pharmaceutical drugs, it piqued my interest. I'm like, I'm going to learn about this. So I just jumped in and started just learning everything I could learn about functional medicine. And that was a name that the time that I never even had heard before. And I'm telling you, it's been a game changer in my practice. My patients have really just transformed their lives by using functional medicine, which is a more holistic way of practicing medicine, even though I am still, have my traditional background and there are medications every now and then, but my purpose is to get people off of medications as much as possible.
Sure, and not just band-aid it.
No,
I
no.
mean, to me, that's the big thing. I'm obviously, again, not against any medication, but the bottom line is before we
Or we
put it on, we would need to consider why did they get there to begin with, right?
Yes. And I'm
So,
going to say that, well, a lot of my patients will come to me because they're like, okay, I want to reverse this more naturally. So we're using more lifestyle. And because my practice is a membership, I can spend much more time with my patients because I found out that the traditional way that I was practicing, where the patients were one after another and seeing so many people and giving them only like up to 15 minutes if they were lucky, and only can talk to them about one or maybe three problems at the most, and then having to see them back over and over, that was not serving them well. And what I wanted to do was get to know my patients. I wanted to sit and spend time with them, listening to them, because Sir William Osler said, if you sit and listen to the patient and ask them the questions and truly listen, they'll tell you what's wrong with them. So, really spending time listening to them and then partnering with them so that we could talk about education and say, okay, what can you do more naturally to reverse this? Let's look at what you're eating. what you're putting in your body, on your body, how much exercise, how much activity, how are you sleeping? Like all these things that we were not taught in medical school.
Yeah,
We were not
that was my question, right? How much time was actually spent on any of these diet lifestyle, uh, you
factors.
obviously anything in call in medical.
Well, we had 1 week out of 4 years of medical school, we had 1 week of nutrition. I mean, it's crazy. And now we know how important nutrition is. I mean, that's just we know that that disease, like diseases or things that happen is either having too much of something you're not supposed to have or not enough of what you need. So it's all about balancing that, like, helping people learn, the don't eat those pro-inflammatory foods. Let's look at what you're eating because we need to change, like, and get you on more of a whole food, like Mediterranean diet, or, just get away from these processed foods that are so inflammatory.
So, what do you think when people say, well, it's not evidence-based? What does that say mean to you?
Well, it's funny now with since time's gone, we do now have a lot more evidence-based medicine. Now we know that before in traditional medicine, everything had to be like a study, evidence-based. And we know that we see so many things now that even those evidence-based studies are really they're not proven to really help like they were announcing before. And the thing is now we do have a lot more studies showing how lifestyle factor has changed lives. I mean, there's just so many, if you looked at the number of research papers out or studies out on the Mediterranean diet, there's thousands of them now. So we are getting the evidence based, and it's not just the pharmaceutical funded evidence based studies of what we used to have. Now, you can look at, and people are really, with the internet now, people can really do a lot more research and find out that what really serves them well and how people have really turned around with just learning this lifestyle medicine.
Yeah, I think the tide is definitely changing. And with AI in the past year, I think it's going to explode. I mean, people were afraid of Dr. Google. Just wait, right? With the new
Yes.
AIs out there, forget about it. So what about the influence just of the pharmaceutical industry and medical education, but also in practicing physicians and what they're allowed to do or told to do or afraid that they need to do?
Well, I know, and like I said, I used pharmaceuticals for that's what we had to practice medicine with. But now that we're seeing that the industry is really driving a lot of um, the things now that people are like knowing that pharmaceutical industry is really pushing drugs a lot. And so people are now starting to, I think, and maybe I'm just being a little biased in what I'm doing, but I have a lot of people that come to me that are like, I don't want to be on these pharmaceuticals because they start seeing, like, just for instance, the commercials for these, what they call the biologics for these autoimmune illnesses. Well, they talk about, okay, it's there to decrease the autoimmune, but then you have all these side effects, and that can really be even more devastating than the disease itself. So now people can do research and they're like, you know what, maybe this biologic is not the right thing to do. And that if I use food as medicine, or I go to a functional medicine doctor or integrative doctor or nutritionist that can help me learn how to eat right and take supplements that actually decrease this inflammation in my gut, then if my gut's better by doing all these natural, more holistic ways, then I won't need these pharmaceuticals that are having all these side effects. So there's a lot more now that I think people are really opening their eyes and turning to this way of knowing that the gut is the window to the body.
Yes, and the other issue that I see all the time in my practice is that people get put on these medications maybe because they had a temporary issue and they're never reevaluated. And then they're on them, and then the next thing you know, they're on five, six, seven, eight.
Yes.
Um, Again, never reevaluate. Is this issue still going on? Do we still need to be doing this?
Well, I have a young, I say young, she's I guess late 40s, maybe early 50s attorney, real high stress job. And she was diagnosed with colitis. So she was going to the gastroenterologist who had her on steroids and all these other medications to keep the inflammation down. And she was just like she's having anxiety. She wasn't sleeping. She was losing so much weight. She was just a mess. So she came to me and I'm like, okay, look, let's just back off here. First thing let's do is let's look at what you're eating. So I took her off of gluten and dairy, and she was on so many steroids. I said, okay, I have we have some of these, I guess we call them medical foods. They're natural anti-inflammatory, like Inflammacor, or some of these companies, these functional medicine supplement companies can make these anti-inflammatory, like protein powders. So I said, let me put you on some of this stuff. I started putting her on some other natural anti-inflammatories, started weaning her off of her steroids, got her off of her medications, and she literally is on no medication anymore. And this was someone who had lots of pharmaceuticals. She is not going to having to go see her gastroenterologist anymore. She's gaining weight. She feels better. She's sleeping better. Her stress levels there. She's not having her aches and pains in her joints. She's not having the skin rashes. She totally turned around by doing this functional medicine approach. It was amazing, life changing.
Wow, how satisfying, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yes. For
rewarding.
both of us. Yeah.
Right. Well, to find the underlying. So, the biggest, I would say, controversies out there in medicine right now, I think one of the biggest has to do with cardiovascular disease. And this kind of debate out there about cholesterol and, of course, the use of statins. And I know you have a major opinion on this, so I'd love for you to share.
Okay. Yes.
Because it
Yes.
still is the number one killer. I will mention that. So
Yes.
it
So
is
for
important.
women, yes. So people will not believe that heart disease is the number one killer of women.
Yes,
If you
not breast
combine,
cancer.
yes, everybody thinks, oh, it's breast cancer. If you took breast cancer plus all the other cancers, not just breast, but all the other cancers and put them together, that still does not meet what heart disease is the number one killer instead of the cancers. It's amazing. And people don't know this. And so why? So what we know is that when women go through perimenopause and menopause, that's when your estrogen starts changing or goes away. Menopause is when you have no more estrogen. Well, estrogen is our natural hormone that we really need. It is what it protects the heart. Estrogen protects the brain, it protects the bone, it protects our skin, it protects our muscles and our sexual organs. So estrogen is such a vital hormone. And when that goes down, then the inflammatory markers start going up. And we know that it's not total cholesterol that's the problem, because a lot of people can have total cholesterols that are high, but if they don't have the inflammation markers that are high, then the cholesterol may not be a problem. So the old school of treating cholesterol was like, oh, your cholesterol's high, I'm gonna throw you on a statin.
Well,
Well, we know
we're
a lot
still
of
doing
people,
this.
yes, they're still doing it. And and so a statin is not necessarily, well, it's not necessary for everyone. So now this day and age, we go, okay, hold on, let's take a time out here. Do you really need to be on a statin? Well, not necessarily, because a lot of people don't want to be on statin and can't tolerate statins, especially. And a lot of women don't tolerate statins very well. They get achy and their joints hurt, their muscles hurt, they get weak. They just don't feel good. So what we found out is that, and what I did in my practice, I've been doing this for a long time, is using the Cleveland Heart Lab. And what this does is it looks at the inflammatory markers first. So if you have elevated inflammatory markers, then we're like, these are red flags going up. And when I say inflammatory markers, this can be like an HSCRP, which is one, oxidized LDL. It can be what we call myeloperoxidase. Another one's called LP plaque 2. These are all markers that we look at initially before we even look at the total cholesterols. And then I take the total cholesterols and we look at the small dense particles. because the small dense particles are the ones that get down into the arteries that are causing the problem along with the inflammation. And then there's other ApoB markers like ApoB. ApoB is really an overall marker for cardiovascular for lipids that we want to look at. And then there's another very special little marker called LP little a, and that's kind of a more of a genetic marker because if it's elevated, it's hard to get that down. They really haven't found something to really get it down. But if it's elevated, then you normally will have a family history of stroke, dementia, heart disease. And so if you have an elevated LP little a, then that takes a whole different direction of what needs to be done more naturally or some other things that you need to take. So what I'm saying about all of this is that you can't just go by total cholesterols. You need to look at the inflammatory markers, these small dense particles, and the different kinds. And as a functional medicine doctor, we really dive deep into these, looking at these markers and saying, okay, what can I do if I have this marker? What can I do? What can I do more naturally? And not just about
Right.
taking statin.
So just so if I could jump in here for a moment, basically what you're saying is it is not enough just to look at your LDL, HDL cholesterol. There's much more to the story, but beyond that, really, cholesterol is not the cause of cardiovascular disease. Certainly, it's part of the picture, but really, it's looking deeper at that underlying inflammatory cause, which is
Yeah.
why when we think about who is in cardiologists' offices more than anyone else, I mean, smokers and people who have diabetes, those are the top people that are in there.
And the reason why is because smoking really accelerates this inflammation or this oxidative stress. And oxidative stress is what causes the breakdown of things. And I always say um, it's more that it causes more of the inflammation. And that's the problem is the inflammation. So it's not a total cholesterol problem as much as what's happening around the cholesterol, I guess is what we can say. And lifestyle plays a huge factor in that because another thing, like you're talking about smoking, of course, smoking does kill people because of this oxidative stress. But another thing that's really people don't really pay attention to that we really are paying more attention to now is if you have sleep apnea or if you're not sleeping well at night, that's a huge oxidative stress. And we see a lot of people who have heart attacks, stroke, atrial fibrillation, dementia, who are not getting oxygen at night to their brain or their heart. So,
Okay, so if you're snoring, go get checked right now. I
yes,
mean,
yeah,
seriously.
yeah.
And
So, and I
not
know,
just people that are overweight, by the way, I would mention, you know.
yeah, no, the lady that just left my office just now, she's 75-year-old. I mean,
Mhm.
she weighs like what, 80 something pounds, little tiny lady. And so we're sending her for another sleep study tonight. We did the home sleep study. There was a little bit of some issues with it. So she's going to an in-house and she has already done one in-house sleep study. And she said it was very comfortable. They were so nice. It was like being in a hotel room. And she definitely has like severe snoring. And she's this little bitty tiny lady. And so she's having some dementia problems, some heart problems. And so I'm like, okay, well, we got to make sure you're getting oxygen at night. And so it's not the obese people, it can be the tiny little frail lady.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, where do you think there's been like something like the missing link between them talking about diet, lifestyle, and cardiovascular disease?
So I think there's, like we said, the traditional way was going by total cholesterols and throwing people on a statin. What I look at now, like I was going back to, it's not about the total cholesterols. What I do is I look at people's inflammatory markers, their small dense particles, and then I'm like, okay, let's look and see what's happening here. Are these markers causing damage? So what I'll do, one of the easiest things to do first is to send them for a calcium CT to look at the calcium around in the arteries around the heart because those arteries are the ones that the plaque forms in. That's where the heart attacks occur, and that's what brings oxygen to the heart muscle. So we get a calcium score. And then, and that's not, and it's good to look at a calcium score because the numbers there, and then you're going, okay, well, now if you have a high calcium score, I'll send them to the cardiologist. They'll see the cardiologist. The cardiologist will say, okay, let's do an EKG, let's do a stress test, and let's do an echo. It's boom, boom, boom. That's all they're straight just doing those tests. They're like, okay, you're fine. You passed your stress test. You're fine. Well, then a few weeks later, they're back in my office with arrhythmias, atrial fibrillation, or chest pain or such. And I'm like, they're like, well, the cardiologist said I'm fine. Come back when I have a problem. I'm like, well, you're having a problem now. So it's not about just doing those types of tests. And now we have some AI. Speaking of AI, there's this really good software that you can send people to certain places. Not all places do it. We're lucky enough we have one not too far from Panama City where I live that I can send people to, and it's an angiogram that they do a dye, they do this scan, and then they'll send the software to this company AI wise and look for inflammation inside or out and outside of the arteries of the heart all around, and also the stenosis and the degree of stenosis. That's a game changer. That's more information than what the cardiologists are really all
So
give.
then what would be a treatment plan, just to give some idea?
So basically, if people are having a lot of inflammation, because it can tell you if it's like acute inflammation, if it's hard or soft plaques and stuff, then we start doing the modification. Okay, like I said, the lifestyle things. Okay, I want to make sure that you're getting oxygen at night. I want to make sure that you're moving your body, that you're not just sitting too much. Let's look at your weight and make sure that you're not overweight. Let's make sure that what's your stress level like. We'll start doing all these modification things. Now, if they have something that's really high, really acute inflammation, then yes, I might put them on a low dose statin for a little while just to keep that inflammation down because statins do decrease inflammation. So it's not always just saying I won't put people on a statin because I will sometimes in acute situations. But I'll also do all these like, okay, let's look at your diet and I'll get them in with like, say, a health coach and let's get all these risk stratifications of lifestyle factors going. And if there's something really acutely that I'm really worried about, and I'll get them back into the cardiologist or choose a cardiologist that understands this test and really will say, okay, I just don't want the patient having an acute accident. But it gives us different levels of sense of like how much to worry. Like, is this something that I have to worry about now, or is it something that I just need to start really paying attention to my lifestyle because in 3 to 5 years I can be in trouble if I don't start making these changes. So it really is a
How
game
quick
changer.
of a turnaround could it be? Like, in other words, I know, heart disease can develop over decades underneath that people don't realize. And so after you've identified it, you make these changes. How long do you test again just to see what might have happened?
So, okay, so for instance, I've had a couple of people that have had this test done and they're in the mild range. So, I'm like, okay, well, you can repeat this in 5 years, or 3 years. If someone has something really severe, we'll make the modifications and we might want to repeat this test in 2 years. So you can follow it on along that easy. Another test that I do is a special ultrasound of the neck of, these arteries here, because if I worry, the heart, everybody's like, well, if it happens in my heart, it's happening in my neck. And that's not always the case. But we have a special ultrasound. The company comes in every few months and they do an ultrasound that looks at the artery wall, not just it is a regular ultrasound, but they go real specific down to the wall, looking at millimeters of the wall of the artery here to see if there's plaque. And not only that, they can see if it's hard or soft plaque. And so if people are having a lot of plaque, then and they're like at risk, I'm like, okay, we really have to look at
Can you
bond.
explain the importance, excuse me, between the soft plaque and the hard plaque? Can you, just so people understand the difference?
Okay. So a hard plaque is the stable plaque. So when it's hard, it's like I call it mortar in the brick. When the mortar in the brick is that hard stuff that keeps the bricks. So that one is stable. We know that's not going to break, as much. Like that's a stable plaque. If it's a soft plaque, then that has more of a chance of rupturing. And when things rupture, then it'll cause blood clot, and that's what causes a stroke. So we really need to see if there's soft plaque there, that because that's the one that gets people acutely in trouble. And so when that happens, we'll get them on aspirin. Again, I will use a very low dose statin. You don't have to use the high doses. So sometimes that's all they need. Um, and we'll also do a lot of other strict the lifestyle modifications. But if it's really unstable, I'll get them into the vascular surgeon just for them to look at as well. I'm not saying I'm just trying to treat them alone, because if they do have to be referred to a specialist, I'll get them in. But I don't want to say that I don't really always just run people to the specialist, because I think people need to own their lifestyle and understand what they need to do to make changes. And we can do a lot of things to stabilize them in the meantime.
Well, great. Well, because now I want to talk about another condition, which, as I mentioned already, we know is the leading condition that can lead to cardiovascular disease, which would be the whole spectrum of, pre-diabetes, diabetes, and insulin resistance. And I mean, the way the current, medical system is really just focusing in on the glucose. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I can tell you that, well, this day and age, everybody's getting too much sugar in their diet, which is very pro-inflammatory. So now we can measure, like back before we would just do blood sugar or hemoglobin A1C. And hemoglobin A1C tells you what your blood sugar is over, say, 3-month period. And so the higher that number is, it means that your blood sugar has been higher for too long. So we do look at that. But more importantly is the fasting insulin, because that is an indicator of how your body is, or how your body's reacting to blood sugar. And insulin resistance score is actually telling us over time if your insulin is running too high for too long, because insulin is very pro-inflammatory. So if you have a high insulin resistant score, then you're going to have more inflammation. And we know that insulin resistance is directly linked to one of the main causes of dementia. And it's also,
How do you get the number? What is this number? How do you get it?
so I use my Cleveland Heart Lab. I love that test. All my patients get it, and it gives me all these like inflammatory markers, insulin resistance. I can get homocysteine, omegas, vitamin D. I mean, it's just, I get a lot of markers with that. That's what I use, instead of just the Quest alone, because I like, and it gives the colors, and people can see the red, yellow, and green. And a lot of people come in with the red, and I call it, their markers, everything, the labs are too high and it's in the red zone, and they're like, oh, I don't want to be red, I want to be all green. And so 3 months later, I'm like, okay, let's work on all these things. And then they're like, okay, I can do this. And I see people come in all the time going from, I call the towering inferno of red to green, yellow, green, and we keep working on it. And it's kind of like gives them incentive, and it's like a little like, oh, okay, it's a good thing, like a dial to watch, on people, and then they're more motivated to do the right things, like change their diet.
Well, isn't it amazing now? Because it's only very recent that actually doctors have even shared labs with their patients. I mean, but I agree. I think it is very motivating when they see the actual numbers,
And the
not
thing is,
just
yeah,
the
that when they
color.
see it, but the
What
good
is-
thing is like sitting down and explaining each one of these tests to people, because people want to know and they deserve to know. And I think, well, I know once they know they're better, then they do better.
So, what do you think standard care has gotten maybe wrong about the way we look at diabetes and dietary advice and medications that actually even might increase uh, the problem?
Yeah, so I mean, of course, medications, a lot of the pharmaceutical drugs will have side effects. Like, a lot of people for diabetes just throw, metformin, and everybody thinks, oh, that's a longevity drug. But I really haven't seen that come out in my patients as well as the studies or people have heard, but metformin actually depletes your B12. And B12 is needed for everything in your body. And so I have patients on metformin, but I really want people to not have to rely on medications. And we do see that pharmaceuticals do have a lot of side effects. And then once you have that side effect, then you have to take another drug to treat that side effect. And then you're just caught in this vicious cycle. So yeah, diabetes we know is very much a huge problem in our country, especially even in children. And it's not, instead of going with another medication, we really need to take the bull by the horns. And the people are starting to learn about what they're putting into their body affects diabetes, because we know that diabetes is very inflammatory and breaks the body down.
Yeah, so I definitely think you would agree. What do you th about the food pyramid from 1980 and what this did to us?
Yes. Yes, things do cycle around, and thank goodness where people are starting to change how our food pyramid is. And, looking at, like I said, a more holistic or wholesome, natural foods, organic, and
Well,
really
of course, when
focusing.
that came out in 1980, never tested on humans. I mean, if you look at it, they were telling us to eat, 6 to 11 servings of bread and cereal, which is insane. I mean, so no wonder we have an explosion of obesity and diabetes now, right? It's just
Yeah.
crazy, which, yeah,
And
it's
we know that our bread is, the bread that we have today is different than it was in the 1970s. Our bread now is not only genetically modified to be more pro-inflammatory, but there's glyphosate, which is a herbicide, Roundup, that's sprayed on all the wheat before it's harvested. So you're getting this neurotoxic chemical on in your body through this wheat, which is bread's on everything. Everything's
and and cereals, which I'm sad to say, I used to give my daughters like Cheerios, and that now we know is like
yes.
probably like the worst as far as like glyphosate. I
I
mean,
know we all
you
gave our
know,
kids Cheerios. Yeah.
well, who knew back? I mean, that was
We
uh
thought we were doing the right thing.
yes, exactly. Well, we do the best we can at the time with the information we know. But yeah, so this leads me to the next concern is Alzheimer's, because of course people with diabetes, well, we know now that they are calling Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes because
Yes.
of actually this insulin resistance that you were talking about, occurring in the brain.
Yeah. So
So
yeah, Dr. Dale Bredesen did a lot of this research, and so we know that this insulin resistance is causing this type 3 Alzheimer's, very pro-inflammatory to the brain, and we're just seeing such a progression of Alzheimer's from there's different classes of it, but this is one of the top reasons that people are getting Alzheimer's is from this insulin resistance type 3. And I know that, Dr. Bredesen's done a lot of great work and talking about using a functional medicine approach to treat dementia, which he's reversing dementia. And I really look at being preventative and proactive. I mean, I have a special part in my heart about Alzheimer's. It drove me to really learn about it and train with Dr. Bredesen because my mother died of Alzheimer's. I knew I didn't want to go down that track. And Parkinson's disease, which, we see so many neurologic diseases. So it's the stuff that we're putting into our body, in and on our body, and what we're breathing in the air. Is causing dementia and such. So we really need to focus on really this grassroots efforts of really changing and knowing and being smart about what we're eating, how we're eating, when we're eating.
so what do you feel about the ketogenic diet?
Oh, it's great. I mean, that's when people are having, that's one of the fuels is the ketones helps the brain. So that's what they call the keto flex diet. But that's really important, and that really cuts out all these breads and sugars, and it's really, and it's also a timed, so you have like this fasting period. And depending on your genetics and such, depends on how long you're going to fast. Because not everybody has to do a 16-hour fast. I mean, sometimes just the 12-hour, because there's different people with different genetics that need different fasting times.
Yeah, no. So I've been working also with people with Alzheimer's with the Bredesen protocol, and
Yeah.
what they do is called the keto flex. And the idea is that ketones are actually, ironically, the preferred fuel for the brain. But there is the idea also of giving it some carbs. So it's like 5 days on and then 2 days off after you've already adapted. So kind of I feel like it's mimicking more of what we would have seen maybe from evolution historically, right? Where we didn't have food and then we did. I mean, we certainly didn't have 7-Elevens around all over the place, right?
Yeah, or the drive-throughs. Oh my goodness. I mean,
I
everybody
mean,
just drive through and get this pro-inflammatory chemical food, laden with who knows what.
and think about it. It's only, I feel like I mean, it really is seconds on the clock that we have lived in this like alternative universe where we have food security.
Yes.
Like it's been
No,
only, it's
no one can,
literally been decades.
yeah. I mean, it's like we never, it's like if you're hungry, just grab something. And everybody has like snacks around and that's full of high fructose corn syrup and all that's like those sugar alcohols, all those things are damaging to the body, very inflammatory.
And it never existed in nature. Like
Mm,
maybe,
no.
I mean, even fruit, which I'm not against fruit, but I always point out that even growing up, we didn't have access to, pineapple, peaches, whatever, all year long. It was always, everything was only very, very limited to that summer months. And maybe we'd get some grapefruits from Florida in the winter. That would be it, you know?
Yes, and but of course, and I'm sure most people are probably fine, but berries are really good because berries have the seeds and they have the fiber, which we need more fiber, but they're polyphenols and they have like all these antioxidant. So I'm always telling people if you really want something, buy the frozen organic berries. And we keep blueberries or raspberries, and but they have to be organic and keep them around and then snack on those because they have so many good nutrients. They're so nutrient dense, fiber, like I said, polyphenols, antioxidant. Those are the fruits I tell people, not the tropical fruits that are the high in sugar.
Yeah, me too. I'm all into the berries and the cherries that are considered, basically brain food. And, you cannot replace that as much as I do supplements. You cannot replace food with supplements. It's just not going to work. Because I think there's so many things in there that we still don't understand. Like you mentioned, polyphenols, like every color of every single vegetable. I mean, it's like the same thing. So now switching gears here for just a moment, because we were talking about this a little earlier, just about cancer and cancer treatment and just the theories I think that people understand now between the metabolic theory of cancer versus is it really just genetic or has something changed in our environment? Hello.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of people genetically people can be predisposed, but it's what happens is like the environment will trigger. That's the whole thing. Why, when cancer occurs, there's something that triggers this. But we also know that we live in a very toxic world. And so people are always saying, oh, I can't go on hormones. I'm worried about breast cancer. Well, breast cancer is much more common and it doesn't have to be genetic. It's common because we have so many toxins like plastics. I mean, everything plastic is in everything, even salt. It's just crazy. People are drinking plastic bottles thinking they're doing better, which, you want clean water, but my gosh, we're seeing like phthalates and parabens and all these chemicals in our food, our water, our products we put on our body, as well as our cleaning products. So we really are in a very toxic world and all these chemicals have just escalated in numbers since again the 1970s. So yes, if you have a genetic predisposition, you really need to focus more on lifestyle and And really, again, it's staying away from things that are going to cause inflammation in your body. And what I mean by that is, a healthy lifestyle. I mean, everybody's so stressed. Stress kills. That's one of the triggers. So you add toxins, and smoking was always the big thing that was a oxidative stress.
So if someone you know or you have patients diagnosed with cancer, I mean, outside of like, and I mean, I always say I would do whatever it takes, God forbid, chemo, whatever. But as far as complementary approaches, things that you add to the treatment, what do you do with your patients?
Well, I do. I've had patients do very well with going on no carbs, because sugar feeds cancer. So I tell people, okay, you can't have wine. Wine's full of sugar. It has toxins in it. If you're trying to detox, you can't be putting toxins in your body. So putting them on really, um, I say no carbs. I mean, unless, the good carbs are in vegetables, but no bread, no sugar, no, like sugar alcohols, and really going on a very clean diet and doing a good detox. If you get diagnosed with cancer, because the whole thing is you want to starve the cancer, you want your immune system boosted to be able to fight cancer because it is an immune problem.
Sure.
And
I always say it's like the best way it was described to me, and let's see what you feel about this, is like cancer, it's like almost it's the perfect storm. Like when like all conditions are ripe. I mean, you can't point to one specific thing that happens, but there is no question if you look at the numbers, how many more people are being diagnosed, maybe not dying, but being diagnosed.
yes. And I just had this poor little lady in my office today, and she was diagnosed with breast cancer in situ, which means it's just barely, it's encapsulated. It wasn't spread, it wasn't big. And the oncologist put her on this anti-estrogen drug. I said, was it hormone positive? She goes, no. She goes, if he's telling me if I to get breast cancer, if it's this kind, this is the best kind you can have. And I'm like, well, why are you on this anti-estrogen medicine for 5 years that's causing you to have memory problems now? I mean, she really could not remember anything. And her bones, she's losing bone density. She came in, she
Uh,
lost so much weight because she has no muscle. I'm like, she goes, well, my oncologist says I have to be on this exactly 5 years. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, but he's thinking straight down here. I mean, I'm not trying to say like, taking her off, that she's not going to have cancer. I said, we really need to approach this a different way. It's not being on this drug is causing you more side effects than it's helping you. I mean, her memory's gone. She kept saying, "Oh, I can't remember what test I just had." And I was like telling her things over and over. She goes, "Well, I have to call my husband. I can't remember what I'm taking for this and that." Poor little thing. It just devastated me. I'm like, "Okay, well," and we see
And
it.
obviously fear that you cannot discount the power of fear. So when you hear the word cancer, you're going to do whatever
And
anyone
you're going to
says.
listen to the specialist, which I mean,
Right.
and that's great. I think oncologists do a great job. I'm not saying that they don't, because believe me, there's great oncologists and people save lives. But in her case, I felt like it was a little bit overboard. And of course, the doctor is smart. He's following the studies, these evidence-based studies, but he's not looking at the person. And
Mhm.
that's what we do in functional medicine. We take the whole picture and then we go, okay, instead of just looking at this narrow silo, let's look at everything for this person. And because, yeah, he may be keeping her, well, I felt like it was overboard for this cancer for her, but now she's going to have dementia and her bones are going to break. And we know that once your bones break, then people don't live as long at her.
No, that's actually one of the more deadly things that happens as we get older, honestly, is when
Mhm.
Like I don't know what the exact numbers of how many people fall, but then it's like 50% of them, they never regain, and then a good percentage will not survive at all.
And one of my specialties is, talking about hormones and, took this master level training in hormones. And we know that one of the things that mortality, which is death, and morbidity, which is, diseases, escalates when estrogen drops. We know that. That's why we talk about low estrogen is the number one cause of death in women. So, and they're having on estrogen. I mean, and I'm not saying this across the board. I'm talking about in her case because I treat everybody different. Each patient that comes in, I look at everything. I just wish that we could look at the whole picture, like for her and poor little thing. She just can't even think straight to even know. She's like, well, I don't know. I don't know. I'm like, well, look, I'm here for you. I'm with you on this journey. I'm not telling you to get off the medication. Um, but I just feel like there's other things that we might want to look at doing.
Yes. Well, yeah. Well, thinking about women and how women are treated and what has happened since, the Women's Health Initiative and they took away hormones. So, what is your thoughts on that?
So that study was done over 25 years ago, and that study. Okay, there was a silver lining, and at the time, all these women that were on hormones, they yanked them off. All these women just stopped. All the doctors took everybody off, and women went crazy, because women need hormones. The problem with the hormones back then, and this study did, was they were synthetic hormones. This was the Primpro, the progestin was.
Premarin and all that. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, Premarin, the horse urine, and progestin, the synthetic progesterone. Well, now, since that time, all this studies coming out, and now we know that hormones are the growth that keep everything happy in her bodies, and that now we're using bioidentical hormones, which are identical to what our body produces, not these synthetic ones from that study over 25 years ago that yeah, I agree. No one should be using those drugs anymore. I don't even know if they even make them anymore. God, I hope not. But
The oral estrogen.
oral
I
estrogen,
had someone came to me yesterday. She's taking a troche.
well, okay,
I
so let
even
me tell
heard
you
of that.
about, okay, oral estrogen,
Mhm.
estradiol orally, there's a population of women who genetically produce blood clots, and it's more pro-inflammatory because oral progesterone, when you take it, has that first pass through the liver effect. And so that can increase.
Estrogen. What about estrogen? Not progesterone, estrogen.
I meant to say, I'm sorry, I meant
Yeah,
to
I
say,
just want, you said
okay,
progesterone.
yes,
Yeah.
okay, sorry, I didn't know. I said
Yeah, it's okay.
oral estrogen is the one that goes and passes through the liver, and it's the one that can affect cause blood clotting, and it can be pro-inflammatory. So there is genetically, some people are more prone to this, to have blood clots, and it can cause inflammation like stroke. So I don't like to use oral estrogen for that reason, but I do, if I do use oral progesterone because that's different.
Yes.
Oral progesterone's good for at night, and it helps women sleep. Oral progesterone, because it has that, releases that metabolite that they call a GABA effect, which relaxes the brain and helps people relax and feel better. But oral estradiol, I really try to stay away from. So there's all these other ways of doing estrogen. I like to use the patch, a cream, vaginal insert, use pellets you can use along with testosterone, pellets in women, and those bypass the liver and give a better steady state. So yes, those can be very safe in most women, and they really have a life-changing effect on women. I mean, it's going to protect your heart, like we talked about, helps your brain, helps your mood, helps your skin, helps your bones, your muscles, your sexual organs, and it helps with longevity.
Yeah, no, I think it's crazy. I'm reading this book and basically it was just interesting to note that we are the only species where the female lives past the years that we're able to reproduce. I mean, just think about that. Like, there's a reason that we're supposed to be here, right? And why we're not naturally producing these hormones. Well, I mean, maybe it would have taken another million years, but we don't have time to wait for that.
Yeah. And that's just it. I mean, everybody says that, oh, I just want to age gracefully. I just don't want, but this day and age, we don't have to put up with that. I mean, there's just so much out there. And if you go to the right doctor that knows and really does the research, if you go to a doctor that like, oh, it says no, 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 that you just need to go to a different doctor and find somebody who's educated and up to date on all this great research because the studies have proven and not only that but people feel better and you just don't see people having people who are not on hormones have more problems than the people on hormones. I'm just in my population, I see that. And I'm not saying everybody has to be on hormones, but you really should talk to your doctor and talk to someone who's well versed and studied in these, not just anybody that just they a lot of doctors only, and you can want to go to a doctor. I say this, doctors and people only know what they know. So if they're not studying that and they're anti it, it's just because they don't know.
Mhm. Yeah, so this brings me to really how can we like just to finish our whole discussion here today, but how can we get our patients to advocate for themselves, right? And really finding a doctor that uh, is conservative, but at the same time thinks outside the box to really look for the answers and is not just thinking, well, I don't know it, so it must not exist. I don't know.
Right. Right. And I think, everybody needs to do their research. And unfortunately, this day and age with Google and AI, I mean, there's just so much information out there. So I see a lot of people coming to me that have done all these things like function health testing and listen to these podcasts. They're on a laundry list of supplements and they're like, they hear something, TikTok or Instagram or whatever. They're hearing it on all this stuff and then they get on it and they come in here and I'm like, oh my gosh, first thing we got to do is take you off of some of these things. And I know we and having a functional medicine doctor or integrative doctor or holistic doctor that can really that knows and understands and says, okay, look, every supplement in the world is not going to keep you living longer. Let's really look at what you need. And it's all individual. So regular traditional doctors, like I was, we followed inside this box. We were trained, this is how you do it. Well, that's not always necessarily how we got to think outside the box. So what you want to do if you're listening to this and you want to know, then you can go to ifm.org, which is Institute of Functional Medicine.org. That's, one of a lot of people find me through that. I'm trying to think of some of these other sites, whatever, but you really want to find a doctor who thinks outside the box, also has been traditionally trained so they can think both ways. And if it doesn't feel right, you don't feel comfortable or you're guessing about it, then go get another opinion. But just do your research and find the people who will listen to you and treat you individually and not just give you the cookie cutter approach of the same
Yeah. So
traditional
do you
way.
have any resources that you suggest that where people could just learn more about just, diving deeper beyond just like standard medical advice, I guess?
Well, like I said, looking for a holistic or like for me, I'm functionally medicine trained, though, I participate in a lot of these other groups, but it depends on what you're really looking for. Like I said, the ifm.org is a good place to start. That's where I refer a lot of people to. And I know there's some integrative online places, but since
Oh, yeah.
I'm not really
Because
familiar.
on the thing is, I would mention, like ourselves right now, being on YouTube, there's a lot of resources on there, but you really do have to be careful about who you're listening to. I listened to a podcast a couple of weeks ago about a lot of these so-called influencers that have like fake degrees. I was
Yeah,
I was shocked. I got to
yeah.
be honest. Personally,
I
I was
wouldn't say
shocked.
TikTok is your best place to get your medical advice,
Yeah, no, exactly. So there's places not to go. And apparently I know that at least on YouTube, they verify that it's an actual like practitioner. Some of them now
yeah,
they do offer that.
yes.
I'm just suggesting
Yeah.
myself
So,
because
and I'm really putting a lot of content out. I'm starting right now on YouTube because I've spent all these years of learning all this information. I kept putting so much in. I'm always on webinars and conferences, and I'm always studying and all that. So I got all this information. Now I'm ready to get it out. And as you can hear, as much as I talked about things, I know so much, and I need to start getting it out. So I'm really getting putting my stuff on YouTube and just really starting to get the information out there. So I would think that maybe YouTube would probably be better than say Instagram or especially TikTok. And like I said, I get a lot of people that come in here with all the stuff that they found on TikTok and Instagram, and I'm like, okay, wait, let's back up here. So I'm just saying there can be too much false information, like you said,
there
people.
is, that's what I'm saying.
Yes, and people who don't
Yes.
really have true degrees.
And people who dig deep, I mean, you're going to find something to debate, like, or to prove anything, right? I mean, you really could. Well, I think to wrap up here, I would say if you have anything like a final call for people to take care of themselves, what would you say?
Well, basically, being as natural and holistic, eat organic. If it's a dirty dozen food, research the dirty dozen foods and eat organic on those. The clean 15 ones, you don't have to really do as much organic. I filter my water with reverse osmosis and add some minerals back. Clean air. I'm really big on mold, mycotoxin. That's a whole nother thing. But I know, I'm really big proponent on clean air as well and clean products on your body. But the main thing is just it's get proper prioritize sleep, stress reduction with whatever meditation, yoga, prayer, walking, get out in nature. Um, you are what you eat. So think about what you're eating and go for less inflammatory foods and move, exercise, and sweat and drink, so you want to be pooping, peeing, and sweating and breathing.
I love
You
it.
can follow me on my speaking of Instagram, my Dr. Myra Reed Instagram, and start following me on YouTube since I'm getting that going. I would love to keep people follow me and get all this great information that I just am exploding about that I want to get out there.
Well, terrific. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so
It
much, Bonnie. This was
was great.
awesome. Appreciate you.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.